Health by Design, the podcast where we explore your brilliant biology, current research, and successful traditions to give you the health of your life. This podcast has the premise that you have been given an amazing design, from a cut that heals automatically to a new mama whose body makes perfect milk for her baby without knowing the recipe, to our fabulous immune system that makes antibodies against the bad guys. Is it possible that studying our design could bring us a higher level of health? Is it possible that once understood, this can help you live your healthiest life? Our goal is to help you live a life worthy of the calling you have received, and that requires energy. We know we need to eat right and exercise, but to be honest, the messages we grow up with program us for a different outcome. Today, we're going to take a bird's eye view of what the Health by Design podcast is going to be about. I actually have an overview for you that you can download in the show notes in this podcast. There are a few foundational pillars that we will go into in depth, and they're shown on this handout. In the first 10 episodes or so of the Health by Design podcast, we are going to explain these foundational pillars. So I want you to picture a Roman portico with 3 huge pillars, part of the foundation to real health. Overarching those 3 pillars, overarching everything, is spiritual health, beneficial bacteria, and sunlight. The base of everything is exercise that brings nutrients in, toxins out, gives you bone strength, space between your discs. We're going to go into that in detail as well. But each of the individual pillars has an important group of topics. Host health is one, environment is another, and then health hacks, or the health toolbox, that give you the tools to repair things that we especially need today. Each episode is going to give you something valuable that you can take out and actually go and use today. You'll understand what it's for. This reminds me of an IG post I saw this morning saying she graduated without learning so many skills she needs as a mom. This podcast is designed to help moms help their families be healthier and not become a statistic. Does it sound outrageous to think that we could become a statistic? Think about this. The reality is that 635,000 people will die this year of cancer. Research shows that 9 out of 10 of these causes for that are preventable. The things that cause cancer, yes, we can avoid if we know about them. And to be fully honest, think about that number, 635,000 people. 9 of the 10 things are in our control, says research, but honestly, new research shows that even the 10th cause is within our control. So we are hearing about a virus that has killed a lot of people this year, which is tragic. Yet think about how many people 635,000 is. And yet we're not hearing answers. We're not hearing how to avoid this. So we are here at Health by Design to fill that gap. Another 525,000 people will die this year of cardiovascular disease. That research also says is preventable. So what do? Over 1.5 million people will die this year and every year because they live in a way that we accept as normal. So we're going to talk a lot about this on the podcast. How to recognize the messaging that is not good for your health, but that is so common, we can often repeat it without even thinking about it. We want you to have the vibrant health that gives energy. So the first pillar we will call the health of the host. So be sure to listen to episode 2 as I explain in more detail what this pillar entails. It is a nourishing diet timed right with intermittent fasting in a way to repair mitochondria and lengthen telomeres. These are things that have been shown to improve health and actually lengthen our lives. So be sure to listen. The second pillar is going to be about environments. So we're going to touch on things like emotions, the chemicals in our environment, and liver cleansing. Sounds fascinating, right? Actually, it is a fascinating topic. Liver cleansing has real-world consequences. Let me give you an example. When I had blood sugar issues, I had them for 30 years. Liver cleansing was what was part of what helped me totally reverse that. So how do you have blood sugar issues for 30 years and not get rid of them? And not get diabetes, praise the Lord. I'm so excited I got to reverse it and didn't become another statistic. So when I had blood sugar issues, how did I handle it? I'd eat something with a little bit of protein every 2 hours without fail. I'd make sure my diet was low in sugar, yet I still didn't feel good if I didn't eat. For the most part, all I could do was control it. And if I didn't eat for more than a few hours, I felt lightheaded. I didn't feel good. It just wasn't right. And liver cleansing is one of the things that helped me get rid of those blood sugar issues. So we're going to go into detail on that on another episode as well. But as we go over this bird's eye view, I wanted you to see a little piece of each of the pillars and why they were important. So pillar 3 is the health toolbox. And I like to call the tools that are in the health toolbox health hacks or hashtag health hacks, because I feel like in our society, there are things that everybody seems to need. To give you an example, magnesium. I feel like we should, and actually we will go into a full episode to give you the different ways that it's useful. But the fact is our soils are deficient. So even if you ate your vegetables that are supposed to contain magnesium, chances are you're deficient. It's one of those things that almost everyone seems to need. And there are signs that you need magnesium, from constipation to headaches to tension to high blood pressure to cramps. There are a lot of reasons we need magnesium and that we might not be getting enough. So those are the type of things that I want to talk about in this podcast, as well as the things from that infographic. That will be covered by me, or occasionally we'll have a guest. Each episode will look into how we are designed, meaning you could look into your old college biology text and find information about how we're designed. And we're going to talk about the implications of how this biology can be affected with nutrition, also considering what makes sense with how we are designed. And this is what can give you true wisdom when it comes to your health. Here's a great example. At the beginning of COVID in January 2020, there was a sign on the wall at our nutritional center, a letter that notified us that a disease was coming from China. It said that this disease was serious and that we were not to tell anyone that something nutritional could help against it. Of course, what did we do? We immediately began to research, and we found studies from the first SARS-CoV-1 that showed what natural things and drugs were used successfully back in the 2005 and 2010 studies, looking back on 2003. Now, I'm not a big fan of drugs, to put it mildly, so I went and did a bunch of research, and I found natural things that seemed to work in the same way. And it worked for me, as I didn't get ill for about 20 months or so, and then, of course, I got natural immunity. But during that early time, some people were saying that Sambucus was causing cytokine storms and that we should stay away and stop recommending it just to be safe. But that didn't make any sense to me because I understood our design. Inflammation is often necessary with an injury or an illness in the process of healing. Research shows elderberry or Sambucus to be an immune modulator and also a zinc ionophore to bring zinc into the cell. So we'll talk about that more in another podcast. But the research had showed that zinc ionophores bring zinc into the cells to stop the replication of a virus. But the studies used chloroquine as the zinc ionophore. Remember chloroquine, the drug? And hydroxychloroquine is supposed to be the less toxic form of chloroquine. I have a client that was using it for years for lupus. So anyway, the studies used a drug. And because I don't like drugs, and to be honest with you, I haven't had a drug in 30 years, and I don't plan to ever take another. So I wanted to find a natural zinc ionophore, and as I researched it, I found, oh my goodness, Sambucus is a zinc ionophore because it's high in polyphenols. Another zinc ionophore that you may have heard a lot about recently is quercetin, Quercetin. It's one of the bioflavonoids, And it also helps zinc come into the cells so that the zinc can stop the viral replication. So one of the things that was most important to know, though, was that Sambucus was an immune modulator. It didn't cause the immune system to go crazy. It actually knew when the immune system needed to calm itself down or when it needed to kick itself up so that the person could heal. When a cytokine storm occurs, it's actually when the body doesn't know when to shut that inflammatory process down. Your body needs inflammation to be able to do its work sometimes, but it also needs to know when to shut it down, or it can be so inflammatory that it can kill a person. That's a cytokine storm. So I was thinking the only thing that would make sense was that people who got a cytokine storm were low in vitamin D. And I came to this conclusion because I understood our design. I wasn't led astray thinking, oh my goodness, this product that we're using is dangerous, because I knew that didn't make sense. The research showed that Sambucus modulates or normalizes the response, and vitamin D also does. The body has 2,700 receptor sites, and if they're not filled with vitamin D, the body cannot know when the job of inflammation is done and when it needs to be shut down to protect the body from a cytokine storm. Our design says that a body with enough vitamin D cannot normally suffer from a cytokine storm. Sure enough, later research showed that cytokine storms occurred in people with low vitamin D, and we continued recommending and enjoying Sambucus daily as a part of our prevention program. So consider this. If nutrition is important, should it not be the first thing considered and not pushed into a corner of its own to make it look like nutrition is just some other field that has nothing to do with healthcare or keeping the body healthy? It's amazing to me how this plays out in real life. I went to a conference once where a doctor was speaking to breast cancer survivors, and he said, and I quote, "Nutrition can affect whether you get cancer a second time," unquote. Then later during Q&A, a lady asked, "So what should I eat to prevent getting cancer a second time?" The doctor looked taken aback and said, "What you eat has nothing to do with it." Oh my, watch for that kind of duplicity these days. It's more common than we realize. He had just finished saying that the nutrition that we have can affect whether you get breast cancer a second time. And then he denied it. I do want to make clear that I don't blame that doctor. A lot of times they're trained in a certain way. They're trained well in drugs, and that's what they know about. So nutrition may be out of their scope unless they do research on their own. But it doesn't change the fact that we need to be responsible for the messages that we accept as true. It is my prayer that listening to these episodes regularly will help you become more aware of the messages that are in our society that are not true. I want you to recognize when something doesn't make sense according to our design. So besides looking into our design and the nutrients needed for health, this podcast will also consider how healthy civilizations of the past may have been nourished. I think exploring these people groups is really important for us today. Even imagine society where they don't have dentists because no one has cavities? Can you imagine living where there are no hospitals because no one has degenerative disease? Yet these people live happy and healthy without our modern interventions. You know what? They don't even have grocery stores. Think about that for a minute. What would they eat? That's the kind of food we need to be eating, right? The kind of food that you don't necessarily find in a grocery store. The kind that doesn't require that we have dentists and doctors in order to keep us healthy. We will consider what the current research says, as well as classical historical nutritional books. We hope to bring you a balanced view of how to attain your most vibrant self by what has worked for others, what makes sense with research, and how we are designed. May every episode bring you a day closer to the vibrant health that you really want. Be sure to listen regularly, like and subscribe, and tell your friends. And if you'd like to delve deeper into these topics or have some personal coaching, consider supporting our private account. There we will answer your individual questions, and we have other bonuses like reading out of classic health texts that aren't available anymore in print. Stay healthy, my friend.